Recording in progress.
Hello, my name is Juliet and I am one of the wellness coaches with the Priority Care Center. And in this video, I'll be talking about diabetes, what it is and what's happening in the body when a person has diabetes. And then in other videos, we'll talk about the recommendations, ways to manage, because then it kind of makes sense of how the recommendations can work. So the bottom line with diabetes is that there's too much sugar in the bloodstream. And it gets there in a number of ways, but one of the biggest ways is the food we eat. And the biggest contributor to high blood sugar is carbohydrates. So we need carbohydrates. They get to have a bad reputation sometimes, but we need them. And it's the type of carbohydrate and how much we're eating that makes the difference. So what's happening in the body just anytime, and then what can lead to diabetes is when we eat food, it gets broken down in the stomach and sent out to the bloodstream. And so once the body recognizes that there's sugar in the bloodstream, a hormone is released from the pancreas called insulin, and it goes to the sugar and it picks it up and it transports it to the cells. Insulin is like a special type of taxi cab, and it also has a special knock on the cell wall. So the insulin is released, it picks up the sugar, it drives it to the cell, and it's knocking on the cell door. And the cell opens and says, oh, great, it's insulin. We need that sugar for energy. Perfect. Insulin dumps in the sugar into the cell and then returns back to the pancreas. But what starts to happen, one of the things that starts to happen when there's too much sugar in the bloodstream is that the insulin gets released again. Oh, and it's already so tired, but it was just out there. And so it picks it up and it drives it to the cell wall, and it's knocking, but the cell's not answering. It's becoming resistant to the action of insulin. So insulin resistance is a term that's used with prediabetes or diabetes. So the insulin says, well, that's not, the cell door isn't opening, so bye, and it just dumps the sugar back into the bloodstream. The other thing that starts to happen over time is that the pancreas gets so worn out that it doesn't even make insulin. So that's down the line with unmanaged diabetes over time. So the problem is that the sugar can't stay in the bloodstream. Number one, it's not supposed to be there, and the body just likes things the way it likes them. And number two is it starts to cause a lot of problems in the body. So the first problem is if you think about a very sugary liquid like syrup, for example, it's thick. And so the heart now already has a very big job of pumping all the time. And so now it's being asked to do more by pumping this thick, sugary liquid around. So it starts to cause problems with the heart. The other problem with that sugary blood, the sugary liquid, is that if you think of sugar crystals, crystals are sharp on the edges. So every time the heart beats, it's pumping that sharpened crystal liquid around, and it starts to ding up the arteries. So if you think of it starts to make the artery walls rough, like Velcro, for example. And so if you think of Velcro tines, anything going through the blood is going to get caught on those Velcro tines. So things that in our blood are fat, like cholesterol and triglycerides. So those things start to get caught on the Velcro of the dinged up artery walls. So that starts to narrow the tube of the blood, the artery. And now the heart is pumping this very thick, sugary liquid around in the blood. So heart problems are very common. The other thing that happens with that sugar in the bloodstream too much is that it starts to impact the little tiny capillaries where the arteries turn into veins at the very end of the exchanging. Our heart pumps away the blood, oxygenated blood, and then the blood has to return back to the lungs to get more oxygen. So at that very end of the line, the capillaries, they're so little, so delicate, like one blood cell thick, one blood cell at a time is going through there. And so those are places like in our brain, in our eyes, in our heart, in our kidneys, in our reproductive areas, down in our feet. And so those are the areas that are most susceptible to unmanaged diabetes. So things like if those capillaries are getting attacked in those delicate areas, the problems translate into a stroke, a leak in our brain. Eye problems are very common with people with unmanaged diabetes. Losing vision, unfortunately. Our heart, so we've already talked about the heart becoming tired or having a leak in the heart, an aneurysm. Other things like our reproductive areas. For men, the most common problem with unmanaged diabetes is erectile dysfunction. And for women, the most common problem is vaginal dryness. And then down in our legs, having cuts, so having a foot check is really important because we might not feel, someone with diabetes might not feel that they've gotten a cut. And because the blood flow has been compromised, the cut doesn't heal. The other problem is attacks on the nerves. And so that the word is neuropathy, but what it feels like, people describe it as bee stinging, just this constant numbing sensation of stinging. So that is what diabetes is, and it can be managed. In another video, please check out the other videos of what the recommendations are to manage diabetes and how and why they can help. Thank you.